right. Cool. I think we should be two out. All right, Shalom.
Shalom.
First and foremost, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Ruchad Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And we're gonna get right into it, Lord willing. This be an edifying stream, right? As you can see, we're doing the live church. Brother Aharon and myself. The other brothers on the SGR's page, which I shared on there, so you can always tune in there as well. But Lord willing, we'll just flow through the spirit. There's a lot of things going on, and yet it feels as though nothing much is really going on, right? Because you have periodically those what is that, Habakkuk 2 and 3s, right, where you'll have some hot topic going on in the news. I think it was it last year? You had the whole Iran-Israel situation where they were like literally launching missiles on each other, and that was a hot topic for a while, and then eventually it slows down a bit, and then it picks up again, right? And so you have all of those, but keep in mind that really the things that we don't see are greater than the things that we do see, right? And so you may not see what's happening behind the scenes, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And in fact, when you watch some of these TV shows or these movies, or even read historically, you'll see actually things from a different perspective, right? You'll see things from the perspective of those that are on the other side of your real life. So to the public, what you see in the mainstream is what's on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or on social media. But when you watch some of these TV shows or you read some of these historical accounts, they give you the perspective of what's happening within, what the people believe versus what's really going on. And so from the start of history, you're looking at it from the detailed facts, but from your real life, you're looking at it from what the people see, So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, a lot of strings that are being pulled, a lot of backdoor agreements and deals that are trying to be made to really get this show on the road, i.e. bring that chaos, right? As who was it? I think it was it Karl Marx, the father of, was it communism? Marx, I think?
Marxism.
Marxism. But I'm thinking of somebody else. Was Albert Pike?
No.
One of those.
Yeah. Communism, I believe, was you had multiple different so-called leaders that pushed that idea. I mean, I know you had the Soviet Russian Stalin. You had so-called Mussolini. You had Mao Zedong. You had even Hitler. Right, these people all pushed a certain form of communism to a degree, right? Even when you go into the concept of communism itself, we're seeing semblance of communism here in even America, Babylon the Great, which was so-called for so long a democratic republic, right? Which in and of itself, that's also even fraudulent. The whole system is fraudulent, But again, just using the terms that they use today that people associate with, But I know going back, did you pull it up? Communism?
Yeah, it was Karl Marx, the
Karl Marx,
individual.
yeah.
There's that book, The Naked Communist. I think that's what it is. And in there, it goes into the ultimate agenda, because they actually have the communism that we are exposed to or hear about is really very surface level. Yeah. And when you go deeper into their communistic ideas, they actually have a whole belief system about like how matter works, how creation works, and all of these things inside of this communistic belief. And their main goal in that book, it tells you, is to centralize, meaning break down all of these individual. China's doing its own thing, Russia's doing its own thing. Break all of that down and level all of them, so it's like that world government. That's how they form that pyramid, okay, by having everything point up to one source of power, one source of control, and that's ultimately what these elites are looking for.
Right, and that's a beautiful point, because if you could pull up the letter Albert Pike wrote to Mazzini, so we could just kind of get into that and then roll through from there. But he mentioned something very key. He mentioned how before World War III, in the last days, right, during the same time, right, he said they're gonna release the nihilists, right? And they're gonna come in and start wilding out, and that's all to create confusion more on a spiritual level, right? Being part of the plan to morally decay society, you have to bring out the nihilists, right? And I believe the father of nihilism was Friedrich something. I forget his name, but I believe he was of German origin. The House of Teeman or whatever. So that whole concept, we're seeing all those things playing a role now, right? From, like you said, communism, right? Marxism, all these different things. Even going back to the Frankfurt School that they had the whole plans on how they're gonna demoralize society through the children, through schools, and so on and so forth. We're seeing all that stuff playing out right now, And yesterday it's heavy. Yesterday I saw an article. I was actually going to do a lesson on it of I believe it was a soccer game, and you had all these fans up there, and they had made the color that they were wearing in the crowd. It looked like the satanic pentagram, right? It looked like the pentagram, like the star, the satanic star pentagram joint, whatever. All right, and then they were saying "Hail Satan," right? I think I have it. Yeah. They got to that point now. I think I might, if I have it here, I'm gonna just read the top of it. All right, they were saying "Hail Satan," and I'm like, yo, what? Like, since when did we get to this point? Like, since when did going to a damn sports game turn into something like this? But it's always been like this. They just found a way to blend it in, so people never really looked at it as some type of satanic, ritual. Let me see if I could find it. You got any information over there?
Yeah, they're making it real tough to find this. Okay, I finally got it. Yep.
Con.
All right. So I can bring it out whenever you're good.
Yeah, Con. I'm gonna get 2 Corinthians 2:11, Babakosha.
Yep.
Yeah, while you get it, I got it right here. It says thousands of soccer fans in a stadium chant, quote, "Take my soul, Lucifer," end quote.
Oh,
right? So it looks like them jump shots that they were giving people a few years ago is finally the side effects. We're finally seeing that. Because I remember they said that the Moderna one, when they were doing the test runs, there was a lady who got I believe she was in London, and she said when they used her for the test, she said, "I can't feel my soul." Something about she feels like there is no God, or she doesn't feel God in her no more. So that it's truly a side effect, and even the engineers of the Vanessa, all right, they went into it and they came up with the idea that, if we're able to put this into people, eventually, as time goes on, you're going to start seeing that their spirituality starts to take a hit, especially if you're an Israelite or of the seed of Jacob, right? They're gonna temper with your VMAT2 gene, which is your God gene, and that's your so-called sixth sense. That's your spiritual part, So if they do away with that, that means you're only left with your senses, your physical senses, and that's when they get you. You see, so they're able to manipulate people, demoralize society with all this garbage that you see in the media, the food that you're eating, the frequencies of the music, all these different things, right? That demoralizes society, right? And then they push more and more as society is being demoralized. All right, people are starting to look for different avenues for a hope. And then that's when they bring in these celebrities and they bring in these talking people points and all these different people that people look up to in a form, you're giving adoration to them. Right, and then the more you do that, the further away you're being taken away from Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, which the world calls God and Jesus Christ. But if you got 2 Corinthians real quick.
Yep, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 11, and it reads, "Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices."
Right. So the devices of Satan is what is all you got the media. Right, you got people even in the churches, right? You got all these teachers, right? Your boss. Remember, these people have certain rules that they have to follow, that they have to push upon the rest of the people who are under them, right? So the higher you go in the so-called hierarchy / pyramid, the more you know, and there's less people up there, and the lower you come down on the totem pole, you have more people, and the less they know. You see what I'm saying? So you might have somebody who's going to work, right? Those people who might be producing mass CHIPs, right? They in the company, to them, it's just a job. I wake up, I go to my job, I go to the company, and I work and I create micro CHIPs, right? And then you have another department, they create the coffins. And you have another department that creates, that their sole purpose is to create them C camps, right? So you have all these people working, though they're working together, they don't know that they're working together because in his mind, he just wakes up and he works at a factory that produces C-hips, but they don't because they don't know anything. They're just doing it for a paycheck. But then the higher you go, they're the ones who are coming down with a plan. Okay, this department, you work with this. Lockheed Martin, you work with this. DARPA, you work with this, right? So next thing you know, at the end of it all, when it all comes together, you'd be like, oh shit, damn, this is like, how were we able to do all this? Because guess what? The leader of Lockheed Martin is in league with the leader of DARPA, right? The head of DARPA. So guess what? They come together. They'd be like, okay, we're spending maybe $500 million on DARPA's new robots. You'd be like, wait, why are they spending all this money on this stuff? Because DARPA needed, Lockheed Martin needed DARPA to create these things without DARPA knowing that they were creating it later on to aid in Lockheed Martin's plans, you know? And then ultimately, those who are in the factories creating all this stuff, guess what? They're going to end up getting C-hip anyway. So they're creating their own demise. They're creating their own downfall. They don't even know it. The same thing goes with these companies, man. These corporations, right? You might have a boss, you might have a manager, you have HR groups and so on and so forth. They have all these things, they're training, sensitivity training, all these different things. It's what? It's to demoralize people, right? It's to put you in a certain form of compliance, right? If you're able to comply at your job, very soon your boss is going to be your president. Very soon the boss is going to be the damn Donald Trump or whatever. So whatever he says, you're going to have to do. So you're conditioned from work to now real life, you see? But let's get this real quick.
Con.
Mm-hmm.
This is Albert Pike letter to Mazzini. Had to like scour the web just to find one copy of this. And I remember years ago it was much easier. You barely even type it in and it'll pop up. But now what they're doing with Google, right? Because that's one of the most popular search engines. They're using AI to filter out, right? Instead of just regular algorithms, they're using AI models to filter out your searches, right? Because that's what it does, right? When you search for something, they give you a list of things they want you to see as search results. And so by using artificial intelligence, it's much easier to train the model to say, hey, in fact, if anybody searches something related to this, show them this instead, and don't let them see this, you know?
Hey, a lady from, I believe it was the UN. Yeah, I believe so. And she was saying how people are searching so-called climate change. And she said, all you see at the top of the search engine, as you hit enter, you see all these clips and links that they don't approve of. So what they did was they had to team up with Google and then say, okay, let's mess with the engine where what we want people to see comes to the top. So by the time you see the actual truth, you have to skip page like up to like page 100 or something, you know, next, all the way. But until you get to page 100, which most people are not going to do because they're not diligent like that, they don't know what they're even looking for. They're going to come to the first page and stop right there. Most people, when you type in Google, you don't go to page 2 or 3 or 4 to find information. The first page is where you stop at for the most part, you know? So they're like, okay, well, let's bring all our propaganda into the first page where most people will see. And then if you're really that diligent and you're willing to go to page 100, then you can find the information. But by then you're probably tired. You don't even feel like looking into it. You probably forgot about it. We probably distracted with a different type of link, you know? But that's all part of the wiles of the devil, you know? But before you go into that, let me get this quick precept here. This is a book of Revelation chapter 9 and verse 12. It says, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. Right. So this Revelation, the 9th chapter, specifically goes more into the First World War. OK, which I believe was 1914 to 1918. And that's the whole entire thing. When you actually go into it, and we've done that before. Right. It's literally like unmistakable. Like whatever John saw, he wrote down, it actually played out in real life. All right. As World War I. And this guy, Albert Pike. All right. He's part of the lesser luminaries, as we call them. All right, that the Lord gave the ability to foment certain things that happen upon the face of the earth in the terms of the secular part, right? Because you have the spiritual / biblical part, and then you have the secular part, right? The biblical part is already predestined, but how it actually plays out typically happens through the secular. Okay, right. So, and that's what you were saying earlier about the different point of views and stuff. You know, we come from the point of view of the scriptures, the Bible, the prophecies, and so on and so forth. But we also give you the secular part of it as to how it all comes to play. You know what I'm saying? So let's jump to Revelation 11 and verse 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Right? So the two world wars, and it's talking about the third woe, which is the third world war. So let's see what you got.
Oh, back.
Okay,
Okay.
we just have to pull it up. Yep. So let's see what Albert Pike, all right, who's a 33-degree Mason, let's see what he has to say about the scriptures and what they've said in terms of prophecy. How is this prophecy going to come about? What are certain things we're going to be expecting? The time of Jacob's trouble, the time where Ezra saw where he says, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days. We're going to read about it right now. Let's go.
This is Albert Pike, letter to Mazzini, page 1. It says the Illuminati planned for 3 world wars, and this was August 15th, 1871. The following is a letter that speculation claimed that Albert Pike wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871 regarding a conspiracy involving 3 world wars that were planned in an attempt to take over the world. The Pike letter,
an attempt to take over the world. Who's the one who's taking over the world? These so-called elites.
Mhm.
Okay, by war, they go. Oh, what's that? What's that in this guy? Not this guy. The motto of the Israeli Mossad.
Oh yeah.
Right.
By deception, something like that.
Yeah, by deception they make war, something like that. Let me see. Mossad motto. I believe I might have screenshotted this.
Want to pull this up, and
Yeah.
we put this out pretty often, but this is Job 9 and 24.
Yep.
As it reads, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? And that you gotta understand, right? The given into the hand of the wicked. We know who the wicked is, right? Malachi, I believe it's 3 or 1 and 3, either 3 and 1, 3 and 1 and 3. Yeah. It talks about Esau being the border of wickedness, and when you go into the word border, it's not like what you think of, like the southern border where it's like a blocking border. There means territory, okay, or habitation. So when it says here, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, that means the Lord has basically allowed them to be able to gain control over the earth. Okay, so the scriptures tell you in Daniel, right? I think it's 4 and 17 that let me actually pull it up real quick.
Is it about the saints try to take the kingdom?
No, the Most High setteth up and give it to whomsoever he will. Yep, this is Daniel 4 and 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. So what does that mean? The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. It means that anybody that's in power, the Most High put them in power so he can use them to bring about what he wants. So regardless of what it looks like, they are the ones who are ultimately, the Most High is the one who is ultimately ruling through them. So if the Most High wants a reign of wickedness going on, he'll set up Esau, Edom to do that. It says here, and giveth it, right? The earth is given, so that means somebody has to give it. So it says, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the bases of men. So going back to Job 9 and 24, the earth being given into the hand of the wicked, meaning the Lord put the ideas into the mind of Mayor Amschel-Bauer and his sons, right, to come up with those ideas to go out into the world and actually, through the money system, set up these wars, gain control over the world, right, by dividing and conquering. In order for them to succeed this far at a plan like that, the Most High had to have basically given that go ahead or that green light. And that is a part of the giving of the world into the hand of the wicked, the Most High allowing their enterprise to succeed to an extent that they can accomplish what he wants them to accomplish.
Right. And ultimately to bring that destruction, because he will be justified. Right. When you have a ruler who is not just, the only outcome is going to be a wicked rulership, a wicked kingdom, a wicked society. As we get this real quick, 2 Samuel 23 and 3, it says, the power of Israel said, the rock of Israel spake to me, he that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of the Heavenly Father. Right. So if you don't got the spirit of a man like King David, right, your kingdom, your rulership is not going go on for much longer, right? You're gonna have a time to rule, just like all these other empires, man. Now, we don't even got to go into it like that. You know, when you look at the time of King Solomon, right? His kingdom didn't even rule forever. Why? Because he went off. You see, his heart was not all the way with the Heavenly Father like his father King David was. You see, so your mind got to be all right. You have to. It says what you have to be. You must be just, right? Ruling in the fear of the Heavenly Father, because with that comes the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding to properly govern the people that you're dealing with, especially if you're dealing with Israelites. All right, because you got to have a level of spiritual touch / discernment in order to really govern over the children of Israel. These other nations, you don't really need that much spiritual discernment / acumen. You could just give like Esau, the common era, right? The secular way of living. You know, hence you have novus ordo seclorum, right? When you go to that word seclorum, all right, it goes to the word secular, which means outside of the constituted government of the Heavenly Father. All right, so it had nothing to do with the Bible. So the world and their order doesn't really have to be, you know, on a spiritual tip like that. But if you're going to be governing over the children of Israel, you got to have spiritual acumen, man. You know, because Jacob's spiritual. Whether it's spiritual righteousness or wickedness, you got to have a level of spiritual acumen. All right. But that's about it. If you want to go back to that, what you have time to say.
Get right into it. So it says here, the Pike letter to Giuseppe Mazzini was on display in the British Museum Library in London until 1977. This letter has been claimed by many internet sites to reside in the British Library in London, which denies the letter exists. So if it was on display in there, now it's not. So they took it off for some reason, and now they're saying, "Oh, it don't exist. We don't got it."
Yeah, just like everything else in history, right? Esau, that's all he does. The information be there, he wipes it out, and then says, "Oh, it doesn't exist." I wouldn't be surprised if very soon they start saying, "Oh, the concept of the Georgia Guidestone is just a conspiracy that never existed."
Right.
Like, for so long, it was right there. This is what, like, we used to say it. Yo, they have the Georgia Guidestones. Like, they broke it down and go turn around and say, "Oh, it never existed. Just conspiracy theorists, anti-Sem. So don't listen to them." You got it, bro.
Exactly. It says Giuseppe Mazzini was an Italian revolutionary leader of the mid-1800s, as well as the director of the Illuminati.
Right. So every time you see the word revolutionary leader or revolutionary movement, it's all centered around the NWO. Okay, the so-called New World Order, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages. Right. That's what it's all about. When you see revolutionary, that's what they're talking about. All right, just a code name for that. But you got it, bro.
Con. Albert Pike, historical Masonic figure, was a 33-degree Freemason, occultist, Grand Master, and creator of the southern jurisdiction of the Masonic Scottish Rite Order. Following are apparently extracts from the letter showing how 3 world wars have been planned for many generations. And it's interesting that, as you read in the book of Revelation, right, the Apostle John mentioned that as well. You know, so by John writing it down and prophesying about it, what he was really writing down was what he saw in the future. And at some point in the future, these individuals would come on the scene and come up with this plan, and then they would carry it out. It says, yeah, and also one thing they like to do is, which is pretty smart, is they don't often do everything in rapid succession. They have patience for that. And so by separating out event after event for so long, it's harder to connect 2 events into one to say, oh, this is part of one plan, because this isn't one man's plan, right? These plans go like generations, and a man is not going to live that long. So people of new generations come about and say, oh, no, that can't be connected.
Right. That's what makes Esau such a criminal, because he knows how to commit a crime. And then the evidence is so scattered. If you don't have the Spirit of the Lord with you, as in a spiritual detective, you're not going to really be able to put the pieces together. You know, and that's why the rest of the world is in this delusion that, you know, what we're saying is not true. Like they actually believe that the evidence that we bring out is not, it doesn't make sense to them, even though we're solving the crime case. We're literally letting you know who the criminal is. We've gone over through history to give you all the evidence of all the crimes that's happened against humanity, and really against the children of Israel and the Heavenly Father, right, by the hands of these damn devils. right? And the things that they're planning to do, which with all accounts is written in the scriptures, is going to be worse than they've ever done before.
Right.
So you got a criminal whose hands are red, right, with the blood, right? Because the scriptures tell you that what he's going to be filled with the blood of the saints, right? Roughly paraphrasing. So he's a criminal, right? He's on the run, and we're pointing out, hey, this is the man. Is this the man that we can the nation? Yeah, that's him. That's him. That's him right there. But it's not until the deed is done, because people are like, oh, instead of looking at the people that we're pointing at, they're looking at us for making noise. They say, oh, why you guys are so loud? We're telling you there's a criminal right there, and he's about to do this, this, and that. And it's going to affect all of you niggas. So we're giving you the warning, wake up, wake up. But guess what? Only the elect are going to see it and wake up and be like, oh, you guys are right. I'm with you. I'm on your side. The Lord's going to do something to these devils, because we've been seeing it. We just didn't understand it until you guys came and put the pieces together. We've had questions. Why did this happen? Why does this always happen to us? Why are these people always doing this against us? Why are we always the bad guys? Why is this? Why? And then we come in with the answers because. And they're like, oh, no, you guys is because it's too much. We don't want to hear that. We want more of the whys. You know? It's like, why am I going to be destroyed? Because so and so. Oh, no, that solution don't work with me. Let me go for why this, why that. That's 2/3 of our people. That's why they have all these innumerable questions. Even when you give them the answers, they keep coming back with the whys. Why can't the so-called white man can't make it? Why he can't do this? Why is God saying this? Oh, this is if there's a God who's going to say this and separate this, and he's a racist and he's this, and only the children of Israel going to make it, then I don't want to be a part of that. That's why you're going to be destroyed on this side, because we don't want to hear what you got to say either. All right?
Yeah, when they're being destroyed, then they're going to ask for help. And the Lord's going to say, well, why? Why you want help? Yeah. All right. So it says here, for the First World War, it says the First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia, and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. Now, one thing I did want to say as well, and you got it, is at the very top, it said this was alleged. They're claiming this doesn't exist in the British Museum. But one thing that you can always look at, being that this is historical, is what we see today. Are these the effects of what was written in there? Because there's no way that the things we're seeing today just so happen to be, and yet there's all this information planning on those things happening. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, and what we just read right there is exactly what happened. Right, when you go to so-called communist Russia, right? Prior to communist Russia, you had the czars of Russia, okay? And it wasn't until World War One, post World War One, you had the Bolshevik Revolution, okay? We're talking, I want to say the 1930s, later part of the 30s, right? You had the Bolshevik Revolution, headed by Vladimir Lenin, okay? He was also another so-called insider sent by the Jays and so on and so forth, right? And who came right after him? When he died, who came in to take over his spot? Joseph Stalin. Okay? And when you go into the history of what Joseph Stalin did in Russia, man, you're going to be like, yo, shit, these people all live. Why didn't I talk about these people in history? Because they fomented these plans that these Illuminati or devils or whatever, they wanted to actually play out. So yes, we can go back into history and read about these things that actually happened and say, oh, so they did plan these things and it all actually came to play out. So yes, Joseph Stalin, Vladimir Lenin, all these people were part of this conspiracy actually playing out to take out the czars of Russia in order to open up the door for them to bring in their central banks and so on and so forth as a monopoly tactic to take down these countries. Okay, because the number one goal is what? If we control the money of the society, then we have the power over them. Whatever president comes in, if we have the money to back you, then we control you. Right? Same thing with the American presidents. You can't have a president without a J behind his neck telling him what to do, telling him what to say. Look at when the Federal Reserve came into play, when America became a slave to the central bankers. It was through the President Woodrow Wilson. Okay, I believe 1912, 1913, around it. Right? And he had Justice, I think his name was Justice Brandeis, if I'm not mistaken. He was a J who was behind him through networking, through blackmail and so on and so forth. They got him to do what they wanted him to do. get the Federal Reserve going, and then get them into World War One. All right. So these devils, bro. Listen, everything is coming out on you hoes, man. All right. Everything
Yeah,
is coming.
right around the same time, the Titanic was also sunk, which had the families rich enough to compete against the Rothschilds, and they just so happened to be on the Titanic. One notable one being the Astor family, because they weren't down with the plans of the Federal Reserve being instituted, but the Rothschilds were, and they said, all right, we got to get rid of these guys because they could actually be a problem. That's interesting stuff. I pulled up here, as you mentioned it real quick, a summary on the Bolshevik Revolution. And what's interesting here is you can only hide so much, right? Because what they try to dilute is the cause and reasoning behind these events happening. But the pieces are still there, right? So when you look at, okay, what was the state of Russia before the Bolshevik Revolution? What was the state of Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution? You can piece the two together and say, based on the cause and effect, this had to be the reasoning, right? This is enough proof. It says here, the Bolshevik Revolution, also known as the October Revolution, was a pivotal event in 1917, where the Bolsheviks, a socialist faction led by Vladimir Lenin, which you mentioned earlier, seized power in Russia. And what's interesting is they teach you this. I remember this being taught in what's that, global history? Something like that. They teach you this in history, but at the point they teach it to you, you're so disconnected from that. You don't give a damn. You know what I mean? And they never give it to you from the perspective of, hey, this was the real reason behind it. So technically they do teach you history, but you never really understand what you're being taught.
Right. It's not the history that's taught in schools is not taught to piece everything together. It's like you one day you're learning about the classical Greek Roman history, and then the next class you're learning about the Bolshevik Revolution, and the next class you're learning about some damn fucking shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, when are you ever gonna put the pieces together? So for us, even before we came into the truth, history was history, but it wasn't history. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like actual make sense history until we came into the truth. Then we're able to put the pieces together from Genesis all the way to Revelation. Oh, now it makes sense. There's actually synchronicity. There's actually chronology going on here, where we can go back in time, which the word chronos goes back to time. We can go back in time and put it all together and say, oh, okay, so during this time, these people, that's a lot of history. But when you're able to put the pieces together, it makes the scriptures that makes that much more sense. You know, that, so the biblical part actually happened in the secular. Oh shit, that's crazy. Yo, look, this guy who was written about, this is what he actually did. Oh, okay, well, the scripture's not going to write everything, but it's going to give you enough to lead you to go find everything else. You know, the scriptures are starting and ending point. So we read the scriptures and be like, okay, we go into the book of Maccabees and read about the Greeks, right, and what they did. And we read about the secular part of it, and we're like, oh, you can pick up the book of Josephus and read all about the Roman history, the Jewish Roman wars, and so on and so forth, which you could back up, right? You could back up with scriptures and be like, oh, so that's what they were talking about when they said that Herod got mad and then he rose up and he went to Rome. And okay, makes sense now. Oh, that's why. Okay, got it. That's why he was kissing up to Caesar. Oh, because see, it all makes sense. That's why the prophets are a danger, because we're overdoing, right? Like this, the Apostle Paul said, pulling down strongholds. We're overdoing the system, the pit that they've created. We're literally breaking it step by step with the truth. You know, so we're undoing the lies that they've put out there. Going to second Ezra, the 6th chapter. What the last days, the truth is going to be what? It's going to flourish.
Yep.
You know, but you got it, bro.
Got it. It's and it makes actually learning and studying history interesting and fun, because now you get the picture you're trying to solve the puzzle for. You know, and you could never get me to sit behind a book and study back in high school. It's not going to happen. But now it's like the reverse, because you understand what's going on, you know? So it says here, they overthrew the provincial government, ending a period of dual power that followed the February Revolution and the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II, right? The czars, like you were saying. The Bolsheviks established a Soviet government promising peace, land, and bread, and
Mhm.
ultimately led to the rise of the Soviet Union.
Right.
So there
And
you
that's a
go.
tried and true tactic that all these eventually become all these so-called government leaders that eventually become tyrannical dictators. They always take that same trip, which is we're going to come in to change the status quo. We're here for the people. And then soon after that, once the people buy into those philosophies and theories, they turn on them. And that's why I did a lesson, I'll say a couple months ago, probably a couple weeks ago. Nowadays, time flies so much you can't keep up. But I was relating how Trump is sounding very much like Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler, right? And I went into the similarities of even the speeches that he gave. That's very similar to what they said, which is the dehumanizing part of people, right?
Mm.
Calling people vermin and we need to do away with these bloodsuckers. When you start using verbiage like that, that now it excuses, all right, what the consequences will be to these people. So you could come in with all kinds of violence towards these people, but guess what? They're not looked at as people anymore because
Right,
people don't
right.
relate to them. They're vermin. You know,
Hmm.
they're bloodsuckers. They're criminals. We
Hmm.
can't have them here. They're homegrown terror. You know what I'm saying? Like things like this. So when you start hearing this verbiage, and remember before the so-called election, the Democrats were saying, and everybody was pissed off at the Democrats. Nobody wanted to hear what they had to say. You had this bumbling fool Biden, and you got this clown cunt Kamala Harris, who really can make a sentence up together and shit, right? Always tripping up and shit, right? So everybody was tired of that. But
Hmm.
they did mention something. They said Trump is preparing to become a dictator.
Yep.
Everybody said, "Oh, you guys are just saying it. You guys are crazy. He's here to give us no tax on tips.
Hmm.
No tax on tips. That's what he ran on, and you guys believed it when he was giving speech after speech talking about the snake. You brought me in, and
Yep.
you knew
Yep.
it was a
Yep.
snake.
Yep. Yep.
Who was telling you that? And
Hmm.
now 2 months in, 2.5, 3 months in, all of a sudden people know you don't see no MAGA hats no more.
Hmm.
Every MAGA person is mad quiet now. Nobody want to say anything. And behind closed doors, they're seeing things like, oh shit, what the hell? Like, what's going on? People are protesting now. They weren't protesting when Biden was there, like they are now. At
Hmm.
least the first year of Biden's presidency, people were not protesting like that, because it was still like CV time and the whole Vanessa thing. That was during his time. The first couple of years. The Ukraine thing came in 2022. But Trump, he's been here what 2-3 months, and people already like losing it. They're saying that things are about to get worse. These tariffs and
Hmm.
so on and so forth. Pastor Harvey going into it. Look at the price of gold right now.
Hmm.
Okay, so all they did was just lull you to sleep, and now they're about to f you over, man. It's over with.
Yep.
All right, and
Yep.
who's losing the most? The so-called American people. You're losing the most. The Chinese people, they're good. They're chilling. I saw a video where there's a Chinese guy that he was being interviewed, and he said, "Look, man, you Americans, you don't need no tariffs. You don't need more tariffs. You don't need anything. You need a revolution," is what he
Mm.
said. He said, "Our people are good." He said, "Your elites, your leaders, they trick you, right? They go around, they come up with all these deals, and they take from you people rather than building your infrastructure. Here it is. Your healthcare is a mess, right? It's all about money. It's all about lying to people, killing people, getting people on these addictive drugs and so on and so forth, just so you can make a profit. See, Americans have become a cash cow, and that's all you are. Once the cash is gone, you just become a cow, and that's when they're gonna put that seed up in you, man. But you got it,
Hmm.
bro."
Yep. That's right. So let me pull up this again. And the whole Democrat, the basically like the last call or the last cry the Democrats made about warning about Trump was like a variation of the boy who cried wolf,
Right.
because they waited until the credibility of the Democrats was so pretty much nothing that now that this would just sound like an excuse for you guys to try and hold on to something. Oh, you're just saying that because you don't want us to vote for Trump.
Yep.
Oh, guess what? The boy who cried wolf. At the end of the day, the wolves did come.
Yep.
You know, they
Yep.
go. All right. So yeah, continuing back in the letter to Mazzini in the First World War, right? So it says here, I read this again. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism.
Mm.
The divergences caused by the agentur, i.e., the agents of the Illuminati between the British and the British and Germanic empires, will be used to foment this war.
And that's what you had. Germany, Britain. And America had to come in with the influence of the Jays, right? They came in and said, hey, let's get America. We going if we win this war, we're good, right? So go join the British Empire in this case. And if we overtake the Germans, we're good money. And then after it's all done, it's all said and done, what happened after that? They paired up with the British and they said, okay, now that we've helped you win the war, give us the land. The Balfour Declaration came years after that. Okay, but that's another topic. But let's continue.
Yep. And so just like that, this is the playing both sides, right?
Mhm.
This is what they're doing. Like they said, they used their agents, right? If you dissect what it's saying here, when it says the divergence, when something diverges, it splits, it separates, right?
Yep.
So the divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between British and Germanic empires. So they had agents in both sides causing that divergence. These agents are not people walking around on the street. These are agents in your cabinets. These are agents in your parliaments. These are agents in your king's courts that are advising the king, you know, because they always stop short of taking that full power. They're not going to make the king the agent. They'll make him the puppet. Okay. Because realistically speaking, you know, that's your best effort. If your agent is the king and they take him out, now it's over. Right. But you stay right under the cover in the pocket of him and you maneuver him. They show you that in Game of Thrones all the time. You know, so they put these agents. Slacky, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one behind the scenes is the one who's controlling the ones who are on the scenes. It's like the puppet master, so to speak.
Exactly. Exactly. So they put these agents on both sides, as it says, and they will be the ones to foment the war. So if you go back and you read into what were the intricacies, what caused World War I, and you see the disagreements butting heads, this side says this side says that, or this happened here, it's because they had agents in there, right?
Hey, right now you have a J-ish agent who is basically almost like a right-hand man of Trump. Right? You see why Trump is doing all this pro J, you know, went from MAGA, Make America Great Again, to MAGA, Make Israel Great Again. Right. You got this guy called his name I believe is Howard Lutnick, if I'm not mistaken. And he's the guy who's behind Trump, and everywhere you see Trump in a meeting, the nigga be in the back of the corner somewhere behind the curtains. You just pop it open a little bit just to see what Trump is saying and do. That guy, he's a J. All right, and he's the guy who right now is behind Trump's policies that aids in the destruction of America, right, the implosion of America, and the building up of the Jays, right? I think it was last week or the week before, you had Bibi Yahoo, all right, damn, I forget his real name. Oh shit, I forgot his real name, but he was out here too, and Trump pulled a chair out for him and everything, and sat him down nicely to show you who his real masters are. Okay, who his real masters are, and if Trump deviates from the plan, he's gonna be out of there, man. He knows that, all right, because he was ushered in by the Jays. You see him wearing that small little bra cap, you know, going over there, sitting down with the pyramid hand that he does, you know, and then they ushering him in like, yo, you're gonna be the guy, you the chosen one. He said it. I'm the chosen one. You know what I'm saying? You know, we go to war. You know, but that's it. You know, but he's the guy that they've ushered in to bring this thing about, man. This whole New World Order shit is being pushed through DJ Trump, man. All right, but let's keep going. We don't got to go into this guy's, you know, thing later on. You might tackle him later on, but not right now.
Yep, and he, this is an example of what I mentioned before. Right now, what we're seeing right now, this to majority of the people, it sounds like no, but he's just somebody that's just in Trump's cabinet. You know, Trump is the one doing X, Y, and Z. But once again, when you read it from the perspective of history, you get the other side, and you're like, oh, the ones behind this revolution were really these guys. But when it was happening, the people didn't see that. Right. That's why it was able to happen.
The wiles of the devil.
The wiles of the devil. That's it. It says at the end of the war, communism will be built and used.
The page.
Oh, the page. Yep, there we go. So World War I, right? World War I. We see the difference there. They said the reasoning behind World War I was to build Russia into an atheistic fortress for communism, right? And they said at the end of that war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions. Man, shit.
Right? And that's what happened with Stalin. And then later on you had Mussolini, and then later on you had pretty much around the same time period. If you really look at it, if you really look at the history, they weren't too far apart from each other. You
Right.
know, Italy, Germany, and Russia.
Mhm.
They all kind of had this similar thing, and that was all because what? Because of these plans right here, the fermentation of the so-called New World Order agenda. Okay, and what's one of the things that they said? It says what? Governments and to weaken religions. Okay, that's the key, to weaken religions, because they know that, yo, if people are still, they have their morals intact, it's going to be very hard for them to bring the satanic agenda about. People are going to stop it. They're going to at least rise up against it, make it harder, So they have to first demoralize the people. Why do you think the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, it was all about corruption of people's morals? All right. You have propaganda, even the 50s, the women's liberation movement. All right. Having women like Marilyn Monroe push this idea of smoking cigarettes and shit. The new woman, the new liberated woman. She's liberated from, being oppressed by her man. Bitch, you had it good, man. You at home, you're not doing shit. You just stay home and watch the kids or whatever and just chill. And I take care of everything for you. How the hell are you oppressed? And now you fast forward to now, you got all these women doing videos talking about, oh, I want to be a housewife again. Stay at home mom, da da da. Looking all fine and shit, talking about you want to stay at home. No, go, keep your ass, stay working, man. Do the 9 to 5s that we got to do. At least you got it good. You don't got to go do construction. You don't got to go do, you're not building those skyscrapers, man. You're not the ones in the factories building all these tractors and cars and all these heavy machinery. You know what I'm saying? You're not working in the middle of the ocean building these underground dam what's that shit? The power lines that brings the internet and the phone and all
the fiber optics and all that.
The fiber optics and all that. Yeah. You're not doing all that. You're sitting at home using the fiber optics that strong men have done to talk shit about these strong men. Why aren't you taking a strong ass, independent ass up in the oceans where the freaking like says the sea's roaring? You be on the ship and then the damn freaking waves be roaring and shit. The ship be going up and down into the. Go deal with that. We're not gonna deal with that shit. So you need to be quiet, man. You need to be quiet. When it comes to strong, hard work, women are nowhere to be found. Trust and believe, man. Every time I'm driving to work, I see these new buildings, apartment buildings being set up, construction being done over like a year and a half. All you see is just men working, man. Yep. There was a time where when there was construction, they'll put a sign that says men at work. Now they just put construction, or they put, slow down, or whatever the case may be. But back then it was men at work, But when you see a woman in that kind of field, there's probably one or two. And all they do is just hold the sign. The stop sign and the slow down sign. That's all they do. And even that they can't even do, right? Almost causing accidents and shit.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? So the point is, Esau had, they carefully calculated this, that if we can demoralize people and take them away from any form of spirituality, the religions and so on and so forth, we got something. We got something. So they infiltrated the cabinets, like you said, penetrate the cabinets, right? That includes the churches, right? These institutions, these so-called black pastors and all that, they have to sign a 501c3, right? In order for them to have form of a tax exemption, so they can teach some bullshit to you. They make all this money, is all tax exempt, and they keep lying to you every Sunday, and you keep going back for more. Prophesy not unto us right things, prophesy smooth things, prophesy deceits. People pay to be deceived. What a sick world, man. But
like it so. Yeah. What I ended up pulling up here, right, since we read here that the keywords were at the end of the war. So the goal of World War I, at the end of it, communism will be built and used in order to destroy other governments and in order to weaken the religions. So I looked this up here. This is the communism timeline. And you have here, remember, World War I was like from 1914 to 1918, right? But really, I think the war ended before 18, or like in the beginning of this. When the treaty sort of came out is when they sort of put that there. So this is in 1917, right? It says here, with Vladimir Lenin at the helm, the Bolsheviks, ascribing to Marxism, seized power during Russia's October Revolution and become the first communist government, right? When you go back to this, what did they say? That Russia will become a fortress of atheistic communism. And continuing, it says here, later that month, the Socialist Revolutionary Party defeat the Bolsheviks in an election But despite his promises of bread, land, and peace, Lenin uses military force to take power, just like you were saying. They promise these things, and once the people buy in, they flip on the people. So guess what? That same pattern is what you're seeing here with this guy. But it says here, it's during this period, the Red Terror, right, executions of the Tsar's officials, prisoner of war labor camps, and other police state tactics are established. This is 1917, basically the establishment of the communist Russia, okay, through World War One. And then back in the letter, it said that this would destroy other governments after communism is built, and then weaken the religions. Interestingly enough, communism takes hold in China and beyond. July 1st, 1921, inspired by the Russian Revolution, the Communist Party of China is formed. Isn't that interesting? Now, in January 21st, 1924, a couple of years after that, Lenin dies at the age of 54 of a stroke, and Joseph Stalin, who had served as Lenin's general secretary, eventually takes over official rule of the Soviet Union until his death in 1953 from a brain hemorrhage. And let me know if you want to jump in at any point. I'm gonna just read a few until Cold War, just to show the point here. It says here, he industrialized the country through a state-controlled economy, but it led to famine.
Just like what you see Trump doing. You know, everything is being centralized, Doge and all this stupid shit. You know, they're not leaving people alone. They're consolidating and compressing everything, and that way it becomes centralized. All right. But remember, this is the beginning of getting people acclimated to some form of this type of government, so to speak, right? Communist government. Now we're entering into a digital communism. All right, that's pretty much what it is, right? But it's going to be a global digital communism, not just China or no. They're doing it in different ways, but the end will be the same, which is going to be everything centralized from top down, right? And people are going to have to be identified via the that we've been touting about and talking about for so long. It's coming. It's coming. But you got it.
And what's interesting about this time is that, and this is why the Lord needs to intervene, because back then there's always a small window for change.
Right.
And that's either the death of a certain revolutionary leader, or at some point through human error, another can come in. When you use digital artificial intelligence, they don't die. So once a system is established, you're not dealing with people where you say, oh, this leader died, let's take advantage of that, or let's make a conspiracy and assassinate this guy. You're dealing with a beast. You're dealing with a system that does not die. It can literally just run over and over and over again without making mistakes, without doing any human errors, not subject to emotions. So the creators of it can set it and establish it, and they can die, and their generation can keep on going, and this system is just still in place, going.
Right. And like you said, how there's always a small window of opportunity to kind of like push back against the narrative or whatever the case may be. But that's only possible, like you said, either if not the Heavenly Father intervening, right? In our case, he will intervene through Yahushua. But outside of that, the only time somebody could revolt or push back against this is if they're not conditioned.
Right.
So before the conditioning starts, then you're gonna have some type of resistance. That goes for everyone. You gotta break them down, break them in, and then condition them to how you want them to be. So break them down and then build them up to how you want. Right now, we've passed the stage of Americans going through the condition. The conditioning has already been 70 years and plus going. That's why this guy said that Yuri Bezmenov, he was saying that the former KGB spy who defected, and he became part of the US, right? And he was saying it. He said, look, very soon, Americans are going to be so dehumanized and demoralized to the point where what's the word? I forget the verbiage that he used, but he says it's going to get to a point where you can show them the facts and they're still not going to believe you. You could put it to their face like, yo, this is what they plan to do to you, and they're still not going to believe you. He said the only time they're going to believe is at the time where they have a soldier or a military man come with the bottom of the gun to hit you in the back of your head. Then you're gonna be like, oh shit, I'm being carried to a concentration camp. Oh, what the hell? What's going on? And then you get you hear your name being called, that you're being about to get your head chopped off. That's when you're gonna be like, what's happening? Too late, way too late. All right, you got it, bro.
That's right. That's right. Oh, and when you said that he defected, you know, if people really knew the tactics in which they use to get a spy to defect, there's only two options for them: they defect or they die. But if they knew the kind of torture tactics that the opposing side uses to get them to defect, you'd be, I mean, you'd be, I don't even know what to use, because, and they show you that in some of these things, like the things they do, because those, in order to be a spy, it's almost like you've been fully brainwashed, you know, where you would either commit suicide than to turn to the other side.
Right.
So they have to do something so bad to you, and it takes a long time, but they will break you and rebuild you for you to say, you know what, all right, I'm gonna defect. So they do some horrific things to do that. But it says here, under his regime, detractors were deported or imprisoned to labor camps. And as part of the Great Purge, 1 million people were executed under Stalin's orders. Sound similar?
They got what's the El Salvador shit, Guantanamo Bay. They got El Salvador prisons. You know, he said the homegrowns are next. The homegrowns are next. They're really next. They're the problem, right?
Yeah,
so that's
no.
You got it.
I was gonna say that I read recently that one of the men that was illegally deported, right? He wasn't supposed to be deported. They got his ass over there in that prison, and they said they said they're not letting him out. He's not going anywhere. He's gonna stay here with us in a foreign country. Yo, that's mad crazy.
Yeah, because that's what they were saying. That I think it was Pam Bondi. I think that's her name. She was saying that. She said, "Look, you know, there was evidence that came out that the guy was actually, he committed crimes and he was actually part of the MS-13 gang and all this extra stuff, you know, and that at this point it's only up to the president of El Salvador if he's going to let him out or not." And he said, "Look, man, I'm not about to release another terrorist into the fucking society, man. This guy's a criminal, bro. He's going to stay where he's at." They said, "Damn, all right, so I guess you're staying where you at," because if they're saying, well, it's not up to us, it's up to them. And them niggas to say, nah, it's not up to us. It's really not up. We can't do nothing about it. You're screwed.
Yep.
Now imagine if an actual American citizen ends up in a place like this. Because right now, that's what they're planning to do. We told you, Rex 84 is going to come into play very soon. They've already started that process. When the migrants so-called come in here, that's the step. That's the first step. That's the opening step. That's the so-called catalyst, so to speak, right? And then they move on from there. So right now, what they're doing is they're kind of like in limbo because they're in the talks of the legalities of it. You know, how do we circumvent around this constitution, or how do we go about it? Do we declare an emergency that opens up the way for us to use emergency powers, or how are we going to go about this stuff, man? Because emergency powers can go as much as 6 months before it could be looked at by the Congress or the Supreme Court. Okay, so it takes about 6 months for it to even be looked at through checks and balances. All right, so within that first 6 months, whatever damage needs to be done will be done already. You know what I'm saying? It'll be done already. And if they declare martial law, all right, which a lot of people are saying that's going to come very soon, we've been seeing that for years. But if and when they declare martial law, forget about all your constitutional rights, because at that point it's over with, right? Because right now we're under martial rule. We're not under martial law yet. We're under martial rule, right? So very soon when martial law comes into play, it's a game over. It's a wrap. You got it, bro.
That's right. That's right. So now we've seen that communism has been established in Russia, leading right after World War I. From there, now spread to China, and now it says here from 1940 to 1979. This is like that domino effect.
Yep.
Communism is established by force in otherwise Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Yugoslavia, Poland, North Korea, Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, China, Tibet, North Vietnam, Guinea, Cuba, Yemen, Sudan, Congo, Burma, Angola, Benin, Cape Verde, Laos, Cambodia, Madagascar, Mozambique, South Vietnam, Somalia, Seychelles, Afghanistan,
No, Seychelles.
Who?
Seychelles.
Seychelles, okay. Nicaragua and others. Look at that. All these countries.
Mhm.
Communism. So you notice what they were doing over there in China to the Muslims, right? The Uyghur Muslims. They were
Mhm.
basically trying to break them to say, throw away that religion, throw away that Islam. We're not doing that over here. You are going to become communist. That is what in about any country that has, because Afghanistan, they do like I think that's Elam. They also have their beliefs.
Yep.
Any country that now, and that's why it was established by force, any country that has to adopt that quote unquote communistic ideals has to abandon their religion. They have to abandon what they believe in. That's a part of really what we just read here as what would be the cause and the reasoning behind World War One. So if they're saying this is fake, how is it that these plans we're actually seeing the effects of it? They don't expect people to go today and trace what happened in history to what was planned to happen and then put the pieces together. They're like, nah, these people, that's the whole point of what you said with the subversion. We've dumbed their minds down so much. You think the average Jake over here walking around, oh, gang, gang, oh, blah, is going to sit there and read to say, oh, this plan that they had is actually what's taking place. We got to be careful. Hell no.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yep. So, you have something, or you want to?
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Cool. This is matter of fact. Let me bring out a quick precept.
All right.
In what's that? I think you quoted this yesterday. Psalm 64.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's start at
You start from the top, really.
All right, let's go into it. Oh, and also Micah 2, Micah 2 and 1. That's literally a perfect example of the letter from Albert Pike to Mazzini.
Nope.
So I'll start off here in Psalms, and then we can get into Micah. This is Psalm 64, verse 1. Hear my voice, O God, in my prayer, preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity.
Right. And this is all part of the insurrection of the workers of iniquity. All right. When you actually go into that word insurrection, let's see if we can do that real quick. You could get the blue letter version of it, and I'll get the online etymology.
Yep, Ragash.
You could read.
Yep. So it says here, the word there for insurrection, it says Ragash. It says here throng in company, and we know what the word throng means. The Strong's definition is a tumultuous crowd, company, insurrection. Let's see.
Right. When you read that and that's all part of the wars, right? That's the commotion that they create. They foment these wars / revolutions.
Yep.
You got more?
No. I wasn't sharing the screen. That was right. But yeah,
Okay. I got the word insurrection here in the online etymology dictionary. Says an uprising against civil authority, right? So when you have the Bolshevik revolution, that is an insurrection. Okay, when you have communists being sent all throughout the world, that is an insurrection because, like you said, you're forcing these people to do away with what they've already established as a government, right? Whatever government they have, whether it's a religious government or what government simply means a controlling of the minds of the people, right? So whatever influences the minds of the people in that said state or / condition or place or whatever the case may be, country, city, whatever, right? You have to come in there and topple that, whether it's done covertly or overtly, sometimes both, right? Either way, you're causing some form of insurrection. You're doing away with, right, their civil authority. Okay, it says a rising up. Okay, a rising up of what? Some new ideology. All right, a new philosophy. Okay, communism, Marxism. Okay, Bolshevism, whatever. All these different things are all part of that insurrection. All right, of the workers of iniquity. Okay, so yeah, you got it. I could take it from here.
Gun. I'll be back.
Yep. Verse 3, it says, "Who whet their tongue like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words." Right. So the whetting of the tongue, all right, like a sword is what? A sword is a killing instrument. Okay. So when you whet your sword, right, whetting your sword is sharpening your sword. All right. In the ancient world, what they used to do was you have you sharpen your sword. You know, now they have a nicer way of doing it, but back then you have a sword. You could either take two swords and then you run them around across each other, and that will sharpen up both swords for you, right? They say iron sharpeneth iron. That's where that comes from, right? You sharpen, you put them both together like that, and the next thing you know, them just get nice and sharpened up, and then you put it back in your holster, and then you get ready for work, right? Now, and then you also had a different way where you take a piece of a rock or a stone, and then you put some water on it. There's a specific type of rock that they used to use though, right? You can't just pick a random ass stone. No, there's a certain type. It's like almost like a boulder, but small. And then you place it, and you put some water on it, and then right at the edge of it, you run your blade, all right, on it, back and forth, and you pour some water on there, you flip it to the other side, and you run the blade on there as well, and that sharpens the hell out of that sword, man. You know, and that's what they would do in the wilderness or at battle or whatever the case may be. All right. So it's saying here that they who wet their tongue like a sword, right? They sharpen their words. They use words that will basically get you hemmed up. Hence, you have things like political correctness, right? You have things like double speak, right? You have all these different terminologies that Esau will use in order to get you hemmed up. Okay, it says, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, right? So when they come up with all these verbiage, like we said before, the words they use, right? The only thing it does is it affects people's minds, and once your mind is affected, your actions get affected by it. So typically, with plausible deniability, which is another of this deceptive wetting of their tongue, right? Plausible deniability is nothing but them doing something, but leaving a loophole where, in case there was some backlash, they could just step back and be like, well, we didn't do that. You know, I didn't tell you that jumping off a bridge, you're going to get killed or hurt or anything like that. All I said was many people have jumped off a bridge and not many have really, died. You know, you could, there's a high chance of you living, like, oh, there's a 90% chance of you dying if you jump off a bridge, right? Or there's a 10% chance of you living if you if you jump off a bridge. But they're not going to outright say, well, 90% means that you're pretty much almost at 100%. If you jump off that bridge, you're going to die. You see? So some dumbass going to jump off a bridge and then boom, they crash and burn and they die. Esau going to say, well, I didn't tell you that you're not going to die. All I said was there's a 10% chance that you will live. That's an example of plausible deniability. So I'm going to say something, but I'm going to say it in such a way that your misunderstanding of it, it takes away the blame from me, or you misunderstood it, so that's on you. See, right. That's an example of them shooting their arrows, even bitter words, right?
Mm-hmm. The part where you mentioned wetting their tongue like a sword is interesting, mm-hmm. right? Because the Lord really put a spirit on Esau to really transform his attacks, because in the ancient world you would sharpen a sword like you mentioned, and a sword would be a killing instrument, and you would physically kill people with it. Nowadays, they're actually able to kill more people with their words than with a physical sword. And how do they do that? By their false accusations, their narratives, their lies, their policies, right? If they deem somebody a DT and they say we need to put in laws and legislations to do this, then they said they put this guy on death row, or they falsely accuse somebody. These are all, and they sharpen it by mastering that art of deceiving the people, turning the people on an individual and saying this person needs to be put to death, right? Oh, this guy's over using chemical weapons on his people. We got to go there and liberate them, and then we put them to death. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more people that, like, their tongue is sharper than a physical sword because of how much more damage they can do just by using lying words, But yeah, where were we? Verse
4.
4. It says here that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not.
Right, because they've been planning behind closed doors for so long, for all these years, that when it happens, that's why a lot of the judgment, many different prophets I mentioned that is going to come suddenly, right? Who's the one who's bringing it suddenly? The Heavenly Father. But ultimately, he has a vessel that he uses to bring about these calamities upon the face of the earth among men. Right, I believe in the book of Revelation, it talks about how Esau had the power to bring fire from heaven upon earth in the sight of men. Yep. Right, so that's an example, right, of what's up? Yeah, that's an example of them shooting, all right, at the righteous, or shooting at him, really, right? When they just suddenly out of nowhere, you're gonna have 9/11, suddenly out of nowhere, you have these Boston Marathon bombings and so on and so forth. Like these things happen suddenly. Suddenly, all of a sudden, you got the CV 19 that just hit out of nowhere. Like, yo, where did this all come from? To the unknowing mind, right, or the unseeing eye, these things happen suddenly. But for those of us who've been watching and paying attention and literally giving alarms and warnings step by step to a point where people are like, oh, y'all was saying this is going to happen last time. Y'all was saying this. Our job is to keep giving the warning. Any little thing that happens, whether it's going to be a direct threat or a threat later down the line, regardless, when we see something, we got to report on it. We got to report on it. Simple. It's just that simple. You know, so that way your blood's off our hands because somebody's going to get caught off guard. Either they're going to hear it or they're not going to hear it. Regardless, the warning went out. You see what I'm saying? So it went out, and those who were supposed to hear it, they heard it and they got prepared. As is written, I believe in Proverbs 22, it says what? That a prudent man foreseeth the evil to come and hideth himself, but a fool, right, walks on and is punished. Okay, so the warning, you're gonna hear the warning. That's the hiding yourself. When you hear the prudent one, when they hear the warning, they're like, yo, all right, what do I gotta do? Okay, they're saying this is going. All right, cool. Let me get ready. Even if it doesn't happen, at least I'm prepared. Rather than those who gonna get caught off guard, because to them it's just like, yeah, y'all just crazy men. Now I'm not even trying to hear what you guys gotta say. And then it happens to them, and then they get affected and turn around and say, yo, what were y'all saying? How we gonna get? We don't want to talk. We don't want to hear that. We're not into that. All right. What's that? He said, nah, we ain't doing that.
Yeah, ain't doing that. Not over here. Yeah. Hey, but to your point, man, it's like we're as a watchman, you know, on the tower, you have to report anything and everything. And it's not, you know, it's not always that you're like, say you're reporting false news or you're giving like jump scare information. But imagine being a watchman and knowing that at some point the enemy is going to attack, right? They already have declared war. They are going to attack. And then you see them, they step forward a little bit and you warn, hey, they're coming. And then they stop. And then they see that people are getting alerted. So they turn back around. And then they come from another angle a little bit, then they stop. So the point is, these elites, they also do improvise. Sometimes they have something that they're like, let's go with this. And then they see how it's going and they're like, turn it around, cut it short, and let's, you know, build upon something else. So sometimes it's not that, oh, you guys said this and it didn't happen. But these remember, they're humans as well. And if they're going and they're like, all right, we'll aim for this, but if we don't get enough reaction on it, we're going to need to pull back and try something else. And after the CV, they tried coming around with the MP. Oh, the MP is this, the MP is that. And then it was short-lived. All of a sudden, it just disappeared. And then they're like, all right, let's try with something else. Oh, we got the BF, the Angry Bird. Oh. And then, so they do these little, I'm going to throw it, but if you don't block, I'm going to actually punch you. And if you do, I'm going to pull back. We got to keep telling you every time they're about to throw something so you can be prepared in case this one is the actual punch that's coming.
Yo, babe, we're like spiritual dogs, right? When the dog is in the house, if you got a dog that doesn't bark, that dog is useless. Right? The whole point of having a dog is so it can alert you if something is coming around that's might not be welcomed, right? So a clever thief, what he'll do is he'll scout the area. That's what Esau does all the time. You scout the area first. So sometimes you see them niggas driving around and shit. Like you'd be like, they're doing all these sensors, right? They're taking these polls. That's just feeling the energy out, right? And then sometimes the thief might just swing by the house, man, pass by the house. The dog start bugging out. And what's the owner's going to do is sometimes the dog will bark and you go check to see what the dog is barking at and ain't nobody there. Right? So the owner's like, all right, relax. It's all good. There's nothing there. He goes back and sits down. So then another time the dog is going to get up again, start barking. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This time there might be somebody there. Right? But there might be somebody that you're actually expecting. Oh, okay. All right. Hey, don't worry about it. It's all good. So as the time goes on, the dog barks every time. It gets to a point where the owner is not getting up to go check to see what's out there. He's just assuming, oh, ain't nobody there. He's just barking because like past 10 times, that's what he's been doing.
But a dog is not stupid. A dog is not going to bark if there's nothing there.
There you go. Right? He's seeing something that you're not seeing. So maybe the thief pulled up and then the dog started barking. So he went down. He's like, shit. The owner didn't see him, but the dog did. You see? So that's the same thing. So the dog is going to keep barking. Yo, like, what the fuck? Yo, calm down. Ain't nobody there, man. Until the thief knows that, all right, even though the dog is barking, the owner is not going to respond. I can come in and do what I got to do. You see? Or I could come in a certain way that the owner is not even, he's going to stop the dog from barking. He might say, yo, shut up and lock him in. It gives me more time, more space to come in and do my damage. And that's the same thing that Esau is doing right now.
Yep.
So he's testing it. He's coming around. He's doing his thing. He's putting it out there, and he will step and watch what's the reaction of the people. A lot of the things that we say, they'll put it out there on purpose to see what are these men going to say about this. What kind of information are they going to bring about this? Are they really going to be on point with it? Are they going to expose the plans that we have, or are they going to be close enough? And how are the people reacting to what they're saying?
Yep.
You see, is enough people listening, or is just not okay? Oh, a lot of people are listening. Let's call it misinformation. Let's take that channel down. Let's put a strike on that video. People can't see that. That's too close. He's hitting the mark. We can't do that. You see? But he's around the ballpark, and that's enough. That's enough confusion. People could think whatever they gotta think. You see? That's how Esau plays the game, man. It's all psychological warfare.
Oh, yeah.
You know, until the point where people become so desensitized to the warning that now when the actual thing is coming, they don't even see it as a threat anymore.
Yep.
And that's when you get them. Because there's no resistance. You know, you guys.
That's a very beautiful analogy, and it literally fits perfectly because when, you know, like the elder Manataz Akbar, he'll do like these videos on people talking smack about Hebrew Israelites. In your analogy, that's likened onto the owner telling the dog, yo, shut up, ain't nothing over there. You're always barking for no reason. But we're literally like the dog barking because we're seeing what's coming. You know what I mean? And the dog is trained to bark at certain things that they can perceive as a threat. You know, so that's a perfect analogy because Esau does that and does that and does that to where, like you said, when a dog barks this time, it's not that the thief doesn't come to say, I'm going to stop the dog from barking. No, the dog is barking, and that's going to have some effect that I don't want. There's two ways I can stop it. The dog doesn't bark, or I just desensitize the person, like you said. And that's exactly what they're doing now. It's a good point right there. In Psalm 64:5, and I think this point in verse 5 is actually very, very, like, it hits the nail right on the head as an example being the letter we're reading about right now, right? That's a perfect example of they encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune. When they commune, they're literally talking with each other. They're discussing with each other.
Conspiracy, conspiring.
Exactly. Conspiracy, conspiring. Yep. Breathing together, because if we're breathing together, we're in the same room. You know, we're in the same area. As it says, they commune of what? Laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? What we're reading of right there is an example of them communing of laying snares. We're going to set up 3 world wars so we could take over the world. The first world war, we're going to say, oh, it was between these 2 countries here, but we really set up agents to start it. And the result is going to be X, Y, and Z. Nobody's going to believe when we tell them that, you know? So these as it says here, they commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? And that's what they do behind the scenes. So in their minds, they've got all angles covered. We got the conspiracy going on. We got the problem going on. And then we're shutting up the dogs or desensitizing the owners. So when the dogs bark, as it says, who shall see them? We've taken all the measures to make sure, even if you're looking directly at it, you don't know what you're looking at. You know, when you try to point something out to somebody like, yo, you see that? And they're looking directly at it, and they're like, what am I supposed to be looking at?
Fucked up.
You had something?
No, keep going. I was looking for something, but if I find it, I'll bring it out. It's perfect in the sense of what you're saying about how they say who shall see them, right? Who shall see them, in the sense that when they make these plans, right, going into even toppling of governments, how they can come up with even the Federal Reserve Bank, just an example, right? They come up with these plans and they're so evil, but it's like they're so confident in their evil plans that nobody's gonna ever think that this actually exists. That's why they put the theory behind the conspiracy. Oh, you know about the conspiracy that we coming up with, but we're just gonna put theory behind it, so it it lessens the blow of people actually believing this stuff. Like if we're to just leave it as a conspiracy, but oh shit, there is oh wow, so they planned these things. Okay, so this came about because they actually planned it to come about this way. But if there's a theory behind it, then it's like, oh, you guys are just saying that this is what they did, or there's no proof on it. Even if we give you the proof, man, that's not you. That's a stretch, bro. That's it. So you mean to tell me that they actually came up with a social security system just so they could bring about the MOTB later down the line? Yeah. Nah. We need that social security though. How am I gonna move around if I don't got? That's the point.
Mhm.
That's the point. It's to condition you to be in a system to not be able to live without the system that they want to implement. So once it comes, it's just a small little transition. It's a small little transition. It's called the brownfield approach, right? Keep the old way of doing things and then just keep implementing the new ways. Don't just overhaul it because you're gonna have a resistance.
Right.
There's too much hurdles that they're gonna have to jump over. What if this person is immune to this? What if this person says no to this? What if these group of people say they don't believe this because of their religious rights? But well, all right, how do we go about this? Let's implement our new world order ideologies and philosophies into the system, so it's built into the fabric, right? And then after that, we could change it from there. Once people become accustomed to the new way of doing things, right? Slowly, but acceleratedly, right? We're gonna get them, and then at that point, once the change happens, they're not even gonna notice it. It's just gonna be part of the life that they live, But see, they don't have much time right now, so everything is gradualism is very big. Like you were saying earlier in the stream, that the events happen, but they happen in succession, but it's spread out, so people can't really piece it together. How can how can a plan since 1776 be happening now? Like, nah, what you mean? It would have failed a long time ago. You mean to tell me nobody knew about it? Yeah,
Right.
that's why it's done that way, to spread out through centuries. So that way, once it happens, by from 1776, people resist that MOTB system 100% because they're too aware. They like their freedoms. When you fast forward to 2025, they have no idea. Ain't nobody teaching them about their constitutional rights. They even know these things exist.
Mhm.
If a cop pulls you over right now, they don't even know how to even interact with that. So when they see these things going on and on, they're like, oh, okay, from 1776 to 2026, we got what, 200, 300 years in there, 250 years? That's easy money right there. These people are desensitized. They're done. They're fat for the killing. It's time for us to eat. Thrust in that sickle. Now is the time for them to thrust in that damn sickle, man. And it's going to be a lot of harvesting. And I'm saying a lot of harvesting that they're going to be doing. But you got it, bro.
Got so continuing on in here, Psalm 64, verse 6, they search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. And to that point, that is why they're able to, it's one thing to come up with an idea. It's another thing to bake in a plan and execute upon it to that degree. Because it'll take you a very long time to read into all the plans, all the theories, all the ideologies that these people actually came up with. Even on just one subject alone, on subversion tactics, they need to study neurology, they need to study human behavior, they need to study all of these things and then look at how can we affect it. And a lot of that is done by experiments over and over and over again. They experiment and simulate, and that's that diligent search. How can we ensure that when I press this button, he ticks this way? I pull this lever, he ticks that way. They experiment time and time and time again.
Yep.
And those experiments turn out to be events in the world that people remember. Oh, I remember when we went through this, when the world went through that, when this came upon the world. They do all of those things. So their experiments are very these are like world scale kinds of situations that they deal with. And they gather enough data to be able to make those, okay, now we understand this, now we understand that. And they're not they're in a rush, but they understand the necessary time needed for things to take place. Because sometimes, like we read in the communism timeline, this started around 1917, and around 1940s is when you had all these countries adopting it. So sometimes it takes time for these to fully take effect, and they understand that, so they plan with that in mind. And once the first goal is accomplished, right, when we jump back to the letter, we'll take a look at the Second World War. Okay, now that we've accomplished the first goal, now we need another world war in order to trigger whatever the next step in our plan is. So it says here, I'm going to read verse 7, verse 7, 8, and then jump back to the letter. It says here, verse 7, but God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. And the Lord does that so we can get some insights. you know, because sometimes you need somebody from the inside to come out and spill or say something so we can get access to this information here, you know, and piece the rest of the pieces together. Okay, but it's all, once again, the Lord's movie.
Mhm.
Cool. So let's jump back here. So we covered the First World War. Let's take a look here at the Second World War. It says here the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine.
Yep.
And this, you can, I got you. You can look at, okay, what was the state of Israel before World War II? What was the state of Israel after World War II? Did they accomplish what they said they wanted to do with World War II?
Right. And guess what? World War II, all right, also you had Germany back in there again, right? And this time the Jays, when you actually go into the actual what actually happened in the history that they don't teach the children in schools, the Jays were actually in Germany and they were living good. They were having fun, they were chilling there, they had a good time. That's why you see a lot of Jays, they carry German names, right? Because they were living good, man. They were chilling, they were treated right. And then they got to a point where they're just like every other time, they live amongst you, and then next thing you know, they try to take over your shit. Like, yo, what the hell? You know? So it's the same thing they did. They got mad at the fact that Germany's they're known for their engineering, right? German engineering is like high level. They're the brains of Esau's whole entire hierarchy or whatever, right? So they noticed that they're like, nah, the economy of the Germans, man, if we're able to like topple this shit and really control this shit, we gonna have some power up in this motherfucker. All right. So then eventually they start to foment plans amongst themselves. And what they did was they blindsided the Germans. All right. I believe they had Poland, if I'm not mistaken, that was allies with Germany. They turned on Germany. And then eventually, next thing you knew, the Germans are like, yo, tell me, why are we at war? Hold on, we not trying to go to war, but it was too late. They weren't able to come up with enough armament to actually defend themselves in that war. And then they ended up succumbing to these deals. If you agree to this, then we're gonna let go of you. We're gonna let things rock. You know, but at that time it was too late. I mean, to the point where they plummeted the whole entire German economy, man.
Yeah.
You know, because of the war and so on and so forth. You know, and then that's when Hitler came in after that, which he was set up by the Jays to come in, because remember, that's their goal. We bring down the system, we put our person in there, and then we expand our system. That's how they work. You know, so Hitler, I think his real name was Schicklgruber, he was put in there. He was put in there by the Jays to push that communist agenda even forward, right? And then they came up with this whole, the Holocaust and the this and that. Guess what? There was a lady who was actually, her parents were part of that whole entire ordeal, right? Holocaust ordeal, whatever. And she said that, yeah, you know, it was taught that, you know, they were put into gas chambers and all these different things. She said, that's not really what happened to us. We were never really victimized or beat up or attacked. The Germans were actually pretty nice to us. They didn't do the things that history tells that they did. That's just a ploy of victimization in order to get the power we have today. But actually what happened was that the Jays were just filled with a whole bunch of lice and louse in their hair and everything. So they put them in these showers, which they call gas chambers, right? They put them in there just so they could use chlorine and all these different disinfectants to wipe their germs and their lice out their hair, you know, and to clean them in order to bring them back into some form of civilization, you know. So Proverbs, I mean, Job the 30th chapter reigns true once again. They were driven forth from among men. Why? Because of your behavior. They're very warlike people. You know, the Jays are very warlike people, but they don't do war in a sense that people do, like, I'm going to pick up armaments and go to war. No, they do it connivingly. They set you up so you could destroy yourself, and then they come in and take over your shit. That's what they always do. All right. And they do the same exact thing even today. If you just pay attention to the patterns, you're not going to miss it. All right. But you got it, bro.
What's that saying? History is told from the side of the victor.
Yep.
And I think when we were going through the history, right, of 2nd Esdras 11, we read about how I forget which emperor it was. It might have been I forgot which emperor it was, but a couple of them actually, because they were so disliked by the Senate, the Senate actually played a big role in saying we're going to repaint their image in history. We're going to remove all images of them being a competent ruler that was liked by the people, and historically they're going to be known as this jerk or this guy. He did this, he did that, he did this. And we know that in process of time, information becomes more scarce. You don't get the full picture. You don't get all sides. You just get some sides. And if the majority of sides out there are what we've put out there, then historically this person will be known as X, Y, and Z. So when you deal with historical information, it's easy to have a main narrative that everybody believes to be what happened. But when you go back, you find out that actually, doesn't seem like that was it. But now you're going against both the modern narrative and also the ancient narrative. Those who set up the narrative in the ancient times or back then went through a great deal of work to make sure it was believable.
Right.
So you need to dispel that with limited information while also trying to dispel the lies that have been built on top of it leading into this time. And that's why it's so hard for people to believe the truth today. And that's why the scriptures liken it onto strongholds, that they've built. But guess what? The word of Yahweh Shem Yahushai breaks it all down anyway.
Yep.
Cool. So back here in the Second World War, it says during the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. So you see how they're manipulating, like we're talking about large concepts over here. And they know what, use politics, use religion. These are things that are broad. They get people. It's one leash that on the end of it controls damn near the whole population. And so they're playing this game to say, look, for a period of time, we build up this so we can put this in check. We don't want the whole world to become Christians, so put them in check. And when we're ready, we'll pull the lever and do what we got to do. Crazy work. verse. The third part right now, dealing with the Third World War. It says here, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. So if you notice here, the second one was between the fascists and the political Zionists. The third one is between the Islamic world and the political Zionists. When you are hearing about, because when you hear about World War II, people think of Hitler. They think of Hitler, think of Germany, think of the Zionists, Israelis. World War III talks of World War III. Who are the nations that are in there? Iran, right? Which is Islamic, and then the Israelis, the Zionists. That's the main. That's what drew focus to the Middle East in the first place. It's that clash between them. So even though World War III hasn't fully erupted into that crazy nuclear war, we're seeing the plans that they had to create it in motion right now.
Yep, because both First and Second World War typically started with two opposing sides, and then their allies jump in. Yep. So right now you're seeing that build up to those two opposing sides, Iran, Israel, and so on and so forth, and then their allies jump in, and then it becomes a world war. Because right now it's a war, right? It's going back and forth economically, they're going back and forth militarily, and so on and so forth. Slight little things here and there. If Israel is blowing up and bombing up your embassies and so on, that's an act of war, okay? But because it just hasn't escalated to a point where major countries are jumping in, all right, at the aid of whoever they're fighting with, it hasn't gotten to that point yet. Because it hasn't gotten to that point, people are not even looking at it like that. But the job of a prophet / a watchman is to see all these building points and say, hey, this right here leads to this. This leads to that, right? And Jeremiah talks about what the least of the flock shall draw them out. We've been telling you about who that least of the flock is, and they're drawing them out what it means and what it ends up becoming. Okay? And America seems like, oh, they're just far in the west. Like Zelensky came up and said, yo, right now you might not see it because you got beautiful oceans, both in the east and the west, so everything is good. You think everything is sweet, but very soon your ass is gonna be grass. And Trump said, "You don't tell us how we feel. You can't tell us how to think, how we feel." Nigga, it's about to be a wrap. You about to feel the wrath of the Most High very soon. That's what you about to feel.
That's
You know, what you got it, bro.
It says here. So once again, they're them using their agents. So that means they got agents in the Islamic world. They got agents in the Zionist world. You keep hearing political Zionists, right?
And in the Christian world too.
Yeah, and definitely the Christian world. Yeah. So they got them everywhere. It says here, the war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, specifically telling you who it is, mutually destroy each other. So who have been butting heads for the longest? Literally, there was once upon a time, one of them, they were saying to each other, I want to annihilate you off of the face of the planet Earth.
Yo, it's crazy work. Outright.
Straight up. They're not playing games. So you're looking at it, you're like, but why is there such a tension between these two nations? Who's driving the force between? Like, why do they want to take each other off the map so much? Because they got agents on both sides that are pushing for that. And Israel's like, their cover story is these guys are a threat because of the nuclear weapons. We can't allow them to have that. We want to blow up. They're purposely being unreasonable to trigger the on the other side, the Carmanians, as it says in 2 Esdras 15, that they may come raging in wrath. Because it's like, yo, we even came down to engage in nuclear talks. Like, we were willing to avoid war, but you guys are literally just being flat out unreasonable. Like Ayash was saying, you want to destroy the nuclear facilities. Nuclear facilities are not just for bombs. Like, we use that for energy as well. So what the hell are we supposed to live off of?
But they don't push that to the world. When they push their propaganda, they make it seem like, oh, Iran having nuclear missiles is a terrible thing. Nuclear energy is what they say. We need to stop them from building nuclear facilities or nuclear energy. Why would that be the case? Because you want Iran to turn out just like Libya and all these other countries that you went in there and toppled because they were against your wicked ass regime. A lot of these Middle Eastern countries out there, they know that the state of Israel was built in a fraudulent manner. So since 1948, they've been pushing back against that, like hardcore. And the Israelis are like the Zionists, I should say, right? Because there's a difference there. Zionism and disease. They're the political part. They're the ones that make things happen. We're not talking about the regular ones that they wear the yarmulke and all that and they walk around talking about. No, we're talking about the actual. And guess what? The people who wear the yarmulkes and stuff, they protest against the Z's, man.
Yep.
The political Z's, they're the ones that the people, their own people don't even like them because they disagree with the plans that they're coming down with, man. They're seeing this thing that they call the genocide, but they don't want to call it that. And people are resisting it. So now they have to create boogeymen. They have to create bad actors, what they call. There's a bad actor that did this. They create these things so that they can use it as a problem, so they can come up with their own solutions that you have to accept. But the people in the world are waking up to that shit. That's all part of the man of sin being revealed. Because every day he does things, he reveals his own self. We don't even got to do much. We just highlight what he's doing, and then we say, "Oh, it's written in the scriptures that they're going to be doing this." That's it. But they're doing it. They're giving us all the ammo. We don't even got to do much. We don't even got to bring a sword or a gun or nothing like that. They give us all that shit. Yeah, here you go, slice. Here you go, shoot it. Here you go. Yeah, they giving us all the ammo.
Yep.
What you got, bro?
Yeah, Khan. They had and you know what? I'm gonna just reference it. It's they already gonna cook this channel, but in the book, yeah, I gotta make a separate channel just for this. But in the book, the Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, there's reference in there to some information known as the I think it's another book, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which now they've labeled as a anti-Sem.
Anti-Sem,
yeah. But basically, it's it's interesting. They have it on here. They said it's a fabricated text purporting to detail a J plot for global domination, and it's so interesting how fabricated it is that see, what am I sharing? It's so fabricated And yet you look around, every world dominating company powered. You know how many people now they say that uh when the whole Jays and Hamas situation is going on, a lot of people that were anti-Jays or pro-Hamas were looking into and trying to boycott products, right, that are influenced or partnered or owned by Jays. That's when people started to realize, what the hell? They're like, yo, you pretty much can't live your own life anymore because everything you use is owned, run, or in partnership with the Jays. And then they found out just how deep the rabbit hole goes because they have their fingers in everything. If it's business, money, whatever, they have their fingers in everything. Things that you wouldn't expect.
Yep.
Food, makeup, clothing, cars, houses, every computers, they got their fingers in everything. So it's just interesting how it's a fabrication that they are, trying to gain global domination, and yet everything globally has their hands in it. They're the most involved people on the planet Earth in everything.
Yep.
Nobody is more involved than they are.
Mhm.
And yet even people that are less involved, it's more credible to say they have domination over the world than the Jays. That's real interesting.
Yep. That's all part of the witchcraft.
Yep.
That's witchcraft, to make people believe something that isn't, and to believe something that is, to not believe something that is. That's high level witchcraft, man. And they've been. If you own the media, you own the banks, you own the people that push so-called religion. You own all these things. You have power over these things. Of course, the world is gonna run into your favor, even if you're doing wickedness and they don't like it. They're gonna have to, dance to your tune, so to speak. And the tune that's on the earth right now, the vibration is just a wicked vibration. Because we have the wicked who are in rulership, whether they want to deny it or accept it or whatever. If you say, oh, they're the ones that rule things, they say, oh, that's anti-Sem. Nigga, that's truth. All right, and truth is not hate. All right, truth cannot be hate. You notice they can never say what we're saying is lies. They just label it as anti this and hate this and all this extra corny stuff that only fools the fools. But real, that they don't do too much. They don't do too much, but we're doing too much. So yeah, man. But that's, again, this is our job. This is our job. As a matter of fact, let's get this real quick and then we're gonna continue. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3 says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." Right. So this is important, what we're doing here. All right, we're not conspiracy theorists. We're not we're part of the truth community. No. We're the prophets of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. So what we say goes, because it's not what we're just saying. We're bringing it from what the Heavenly Father says. Okay? So what he says goes. His word is bond. His word is his word. That's it. So you should be happy that, oh, damn, the Lord actually sent men out here to tell us what it is, so we can be aware, we can be prepared. Exposing this devil for who he is. Mad people been doing it, but guess what happens? They keep getting cooked. Esau will cook your ass if you try to expose him for who he really is. How come they can't do that to the men of the Lord? Right? Because the Lord said, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. We have a job to do. We have a mandate, and we have to carry it out. And until it's done, there ain't a damn thing they can do about it. They're just going to have to sit there and endure the pain. That's all. All right, you want to take the pain. You could take medicine. You could take aspirin. It's not going to change the fact that what we're saying is true, and the judgment is coming. All right? Verse 4 says, who opposes it? Are you going to say something?
No. Yeah.
Verse 4, 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Right? And how's he doing that? Through his philosophies, through his technology, right? Because the Daniel the 12th chapter says what? That knowledge shall increase. Right? And what does the scripture say? What? Knowledge puffeth up. So the more knowledge they get, the more puffed up they become, the more proud they become, the more rebellious they become. That's why they're saying that they sit in the temple of God, showing themselves that they are God. To the point where they got Noah Harari talking about dataism. How can we create an inorganic world that the God of the Bible or the God of heaven, the things that he's done, we're going to outdo that. We're going to create something even crazier than that. Like what? That's straight up, oh man, shit. But we can't talk about it. We can't bring it out. We can't cook them for this.
Nope.
It says what? Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things, and now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. Okay? Revealed in his time, man. That's what's going on. Let's go into that word revealed. All right, to pull back the veil, right? That covering cast, that gross darkness, that stronghold, right? When you go into that word reveal, it goes into the word apocalypto. That's where you get the book of Revelation from. Apocalypsis, right? So apocalypto, it says to uncover, to lay open what has been veiled or covered up. All right. Second Ezra is the 6th chapter, right? The truth is finally what is flourishing. All right. It says what? To disclose, to make bare, to make plain upon tables, man. All right. So Esau is being exposed, right? It says to make known, right? Because these things were hidden. That's why it's called secret societies. All right. The esoteric. But now it's being made known, right? It says to what? To make manifest, to disclose what before was unknown. Okay. So let's get this continuing. We're making it public. We're making it known, right? He's being revealed in his time, right? It says, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Okay, the mystery, that means it's something that's not known. So the men of the Lord are going to be put in these last days to make that mystery known. Whether it's the mystery of the Heavenly Father or the mystery of Esau, Edom, and his secret societies and his agendas and his plans, everything is being made known unto the world, man. By way of the prophets of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, starting from our elders and apostles of Great Millstone on down. Okay, it says what? Only he now who letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. So the Heavenly Father for a time didn't allow for this truth to come out. So much so that these devils really got in their minds that they could really fulfill this without anyone knowing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get the concept of the revelation of the method. We could put it in their face and they're still not going to know. And if one or two of them is able to find out, we're going to use plausible deniability to escape from that judgment. Well, you don't got all the bases are covered. Every base that you go to, remember in baseball, you can only go to a base if it's open. But if there's somebody on that base, you can't go there. So what are you going to do? A run has to be forced home for a base to be open for the guy to go into first or second or third or whatever. In this case, every base got prophets on there. So that vagabond, that damn demon is running, chasing, looking for a base to hide, and you got prophets over there. And all the prophets are there touting, oh, here he comes. Yeah, that's the devil right there for you. That's him right there. He's going to be mad. He's going to be pissed. You got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Now what? Well, when a serpent has nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, what do? They strike. They strike back. Okay, and they strike very aggressively with venom to kill, because that's the only way out. That's what we're about to see soon. It says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, once again, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. So when the apostles started going into these things where you got the camp saying, oh, you guys are going to Illuminati, or that's conspiracy stuff. That's all part of them being revealed. Okay? To you, it might mean nothing, but guess what? To the Heavenly Father and to the elect, it's everything. Okay? It's everything, because that's the first point of the light being shined upon the face of the earth. All right? All this wickedness, this gross darkness, the people, all right, the covering cast, all these things is being taken off, man. The hammer of the earth, okay? The man that weakeneth the nations. It's all one people, one person. And we're highlighting them, man. They came up with this idea of this fermentation of the World War III and all that. We're exposing it right now. This is all part of us revealing, all right, them and consuming, all right, the Lord consuming them with the spirit of his mouth, the prophets. Okay? So what we're doing is a form of consuming, all right, these devils and their plans, man. All right? It says, what? It shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And that's when Yahushua comes back. Right? His glory, his splendor, his magnificence, his power. Okay? He's going to destroy this place, man. And we know that. We speak confidently because we've seen it. Okay? When we read it, we've seen it because it's been given to us already, man. All right? It's just a matter of time for these things to be manifested to the rest of the world who haven't seen it. They're going to have to live it. All right? It says, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. We're in the age of AI, technology. It's all filled with lies and deceit. All right? Look at something called deep fake. Even the name alone, deep fake. All right? That's all you need to know. Right? It says, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. Okay? So a lot of people going to perish because they going to buy into this deception, right? It's through the deception that Esau is going to come out with the MOTB. So they're going to have to fall for it, and then they're going to be destroyed after that. Okay, not only are you going to be destroyed by thermonuclear missiles, but in Revelation 16, it talks about what? That grievous sword. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to have that grievous sword, that pus, you know what I'm saying? That side effect, all right, of the CBDC, the MOTB inside of you, man. You know, it's going to have a reaction to it. The people, you're going to have a reaction to that device in you. It's a foreign device, you know? But you got it, bro.
Yeah, Khan. So let's continue on here, and we'll see how much we can get through on this. I think the main point will be like the chunk on this page, but let's see how much we can get through the spirit. Tomorrow. All right. So it says here. Oh, right. So verse the second paragraph says, meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, is that not what we're seeing?
Yep.
Will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists. I think that's as you were mentioning that earlier, Aharon. We shall release the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil.
Right. So nihilism, the nihilists are these damn demons, as we started before in the broadcast or in the lesson, of these people, the soccer fans that went to a stadium and they're saying hail Satan, hail Lucifer, and all this, take my soul, all this bullshit. Right. That's a byproduct or a side effect, all right, of these nihilists being put out there. When you have all these TGs and LGBT, no IQ, all this shit is all part of the nihilistic spirit. Okay, when you go into that word nihilism, it says the doctrine of negation. It says in reference to religion or morals. So they're negating your religion or your morals. That's why you have what you have now. Okay, and it came up by the man, a German philosopher, Friedrich Hayek. All right, back in 1743 to 1819 is when he lived. Okay, but it says what? It's a rejection of fundamental social and political structures. The Bolshevik Revolution was all about that. Communism is all about that. Okay, yep, got some information on that as well.
Yep, it's
Bring that
very
up.
interesting. It says here, nihilism is a family of views that reject certain aspects of existence. There have been different nihilist positions, including the views that life is meaningless, the moral, and I believe the meaningless here, not to say like life is worthless, but like, you know how we tell you like there's a purpose, there's a reason why you're on here. You have people that just live like, I'm just here, so I make the best of it. YOLO, basically, right? You only live once, do whatever you want. It says that moral values are baseless and that knowledge is impossible. These views, yes, I?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that's the tried and true tactic of these the Black Lives Matter bullshit. This stems from this, right? The whole concept of destroying the so-called African American homes, right? Changing the order of things, putting a woman over a man. These are all orders that are set in order. It's been like that for years. That's just nature, right? But they're negating what works and putting in what doesn't work to create that confusion. And then out of that confusion, they could come up with something else. You know, so we're in that state right now. Noah Harari and all these dudes, the World Economic Forum, the other guy who looks like a Billy Goat, the J dude that looks like a retarded little kid. What's his name? Fink, Larry Fink, right? BlackRock, him. Their philosophy, all their philosophy. Yeah, that kid look like a retard. But all the philosophies that they have is all nihilistic. It's all negating religion and morals, right? You have women, sexy red, all this shit. You know, you got children, 13-year-olds talking about, yeah, what's up, man? I got the stick, man. I got like what? What is going on here, man? There's this. I just saw this thing of a kid. I think he was a teenager or something. He just got 80 years in prison. 80 years. because he killed somebody.
It was I think it was this guy, TK, I think that's his name.
Yeah, one of these degenerate ass demons.
Yeah, when he was younger, he made a song at this age, right? Born in 2000. I forgot when the song came out a couple years ago. This guy murdered somebody, then he escaped the cops, went and made a music video about it. It's literally called The Race, and that's how they caught his ass.
Wow.
So if you look up, and it went viral, that song, The Race. And in the music video, you can see him right there, with guns and shit, just freaking
the screen.
Yeah. Oh, Slacky. Yep. Right here. This guy, TK, right? So that's him at that time. He just escaped the cops. He went and made a song about murdering somebody and escaping the cops and being on the run called The Race. And then they finally caught his ass. And then, now this is what he looks like. They give him that 80 years.
Like a damn monkey, bro. Annoying ass little nigga, man.
Bro,
See, but this is why ancient Israel, right? The Lord had it where when you had a son like this, that's not beneficial to society. You take his ass out, right? You stone his ass to death, man, because he's unproductive. What point do you have with a nigga like this? That's why he's being sent out for 80 years. 80 years? Boy, you're gonna be behind bars and the missile's gonna eat your ass up, boy.
That's it.
That's what's gonna happen to him. 80 years. That's all an end product or a byproduct of nihilism, man. All right, but you got it, bro.
Hey, but to that point, right? There's a bit more in here. It says these views span various branches of philosophy, including ethics, value theory, epistemology, and metaphysics. Nihilism is often characterized as a broad cultural phenomenon or historical movement that pervades modernity in the Western world. Now, the word pervades, when you look into it, it says here, especially of a smell, obviously not exclusive to, spread through and be perceived in every part of. So nihilism is basically been spread through the modern Western world. So when you look at the way people live today, in essence, they are nihilists. They just don't even know of that term or know how to categorize themselves as such, but that's basically what they are. And so when a matter of fact, let me read this part too. It says, existential nihilism asserts that life is inherently meaningless and lacks a higher purpose. By suggesting that all individual and societal achievements are ultimately pointless, it can lead to indifference, lack of motivation, and existential crisis. And that's why you see these people living that, like, when you look at Jake walking about, they look like they have no purpose. They just do the same thing over and over and over again. And it's vanity.
Right.
That's the word.
Right. And it goes to the word nil, which means none or zero. Life is pointless. It's not nothing. Nil. It's zilch. It ain't no point in this. Well, we ain't going nowhere. We ain't come from nowhere. We're not going nowhere. We just walking out. Niggas really have that mindset. In the summertime, they just be outside. Why are you outside? Niggas gotta be outside, bro. We just outside. Why? Why are you outside? You want to backhand these niggas? Why are you outside, bro? Go back inside and do something productive, man. What is wrong with you niggas? And all they do is just cause mischief. It's so infuriating, bro. Driving through the streets of the Bronx and you see all these whole ass niggas playing loud ass songs like you're wicked and you're enjoying life like ain't nothing going on. That shit is very vexing, bro. And then they're not even trying to hear anything you have to say. As a matter of fact, they hinder what you're trying to do. What annoyance, But hey, very soon that's all part of the vexation that we have to suffer, But eventually we're gonna be rejoicing when all this stuff gets wiped away. Revelation 18, right? We're gonna be rejoicing, man. We're gonna be happy, right? The Lord's gonna wipe all our tears off our eyes, right? There'll be no more sorrow, no more pain, no more crying, no more suffering, no more vexation, no more sighing, right? You wonder how many times we sigh in a day. Oh man, you know what I'm saying? Every month, the first of the month come in, rent. These bills, that bill, this, all this shit's gonna be over with, man. The rat race, we're gonna stop running that. And Esau, you're gonna take over, nigga. You're gonna be running that damn rat race, man. And we're gonna make it an impossible rat race for you to run. All right? You running it is not gonna be enough. You could crawl, you could glide, you could fly, whatever. You're not going able to complete this rat race we're going to set for you, man. It never ends. And then by the time you finish it, that 1,000 years over, you end up in a damn incinerator. You get the real Holocaust. All right, because that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. You double said that you already went through a Holocaust. Well, we about to we gonna show you. Obadiah 1:18. We gonna show you.
We
You know,
outside. We'll be outside, all right.
it'll be outside. Which is what outside of the temple, profane. We're gonna give them the treatment that they deserve. All right, all this masquerading, right? As it says, I believe in the book of Corinthians, First or Second Corinthians, it talks about that no, not to marvel, for Satan himself has transformed into an angel of light. Yeah. So that's what they do, man. They do all this conniving shit. That's why the scripture says, "Never trust thine enemy." All right, though he come crouching, they're gonna come to you with all this. Yeah, this is what we do. And then once you expose it, then all of a sudden, oh, it doesn't really matter what we're saying, nigga. Why the fuck did you bring it up in the first place then?
Yeah.
But you got it, bro.
God, we're gonna finish it on this page here. Right, dealing with the nihilists. So basically, they're describing this social cataclysm that they keep mentioning here. It sounds like something, on the line of Jacob's trouble, right?
Oh yeah, that's the point. Yep.
It says a social cataclysm refers to a sudden and violent upheaval, disruption, or collapse within a society. This can be caused by a variety of factors, including political instability, economic collapse, natural disasters, or societal shifts that dramatically alter the way people live and interact. So, what happened?
That's what I was saying. There you go. That's what we were saying earlier, that yes, they talk about the steps for World War III, but they also talk about how they're going to bring about Jacob's trouble. How they're going to set it up, because it's a war between a righteousness and wickedness. But within that war, you have people suffering, you have people dying, you have people go, because Esau, the wickedness, is trying to prevail over the righteousness. So his thing is, I'm going to come in and infiltrate, mess up the whole entire playing field, and then rise up. And now while you try to jump up to fight against me, you're, oh shit, there's a trap right here, I didn't even see it. Oh, there. That's what they're doing now. So they're setting the stage all throughout the governments. And by the time they start to strike, it's going to be too late. It's not enough people could do to be able to fight back. And the only thing they're going to do is to fight themselves. And that's the only thing they're going to do, because the stage is set. Like Buzz was saying yesterday about the kid Carmelo Anthony. Mm-hmm. That's all part setting up the stage for race wars, race riots. Right? Why is it happening all around the same time with the whole the Trayvon Martin things, the George Floyd, what's the other ones? There are all these other black people that just get mowed down. It's all psychological, right? Number one, it keeps Jake in a sense of, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to end up like that. I'm not going to put myself in that type of situation. But also rouses Jake up emotionally, and also makes Esau get turned up to the point where he's like, why are you rising up? What makes you think it's okay to stand up against our system, right? You deserve what you got. And Jake and their monkey ass mind think that, oh, we're living in an equal playing field, equal society. No, nigga. Until you get it through your head that you're here to serve slavery, things ain't gonna go good for you. All right, a lot of you niggas, you Jakes, you hard-headed, frozen avocado head ass niggas, man. You think that because society has changed, oh, there ain't no more Jim Crow laws and all this, that we're free. You're never gonna be in the stead of a Rothschild, bro. You're not built like that. You're not meant to be there. You're better than that. But there's a reason why you're down at the bottom. Stop trying to, trimming thy ways to seek love, man. Stop trying so hard to fit in. We tell you that you're the Israelites. You're sons of God. You're the sons of the Most High. Nah, we black. Oh, why y'all always coming in here with this God talk, man? We ain't trying to hear that, man. We gods. We the gods, man. We the kings, man. But you don't move like that. You don't think like that, man. How you gonna call yourself a god and a king, but yeah, you move like a slave and a bitch? That's annoying, man. We don't want to be around no niggas like that. You niggas is wicked. I saw a video yesterday. It was so unfortunate. You got these hooligans, Jake. Oh, it's always Jake, right? And they all grouped up amongst each other. They all look the same. The regular hoodie, sweatpants, and he looked like he's out of shape, and he's standing there with his hands in his pocket. And they're all standing there. Some niggas wearing blue, some niggas wearing red, some niggas wearing gray, some niggas wearing black. That's typical nigga shit. And it's all grouped up, like a whole bunch of faggots grouped up, standing around each other. And what happens? They start going back and forth. Yo, we said what? We said what? Yo. And then he punches the other guy in the face. Next thing you know, a gun comes out, pop, pop, pop. He kills him just like that. He's gone. He kills him, cold blood, just like that. And then he runs off with the gun on his side like a faggot. He runs off like ain't nobody seen him.
Like a stick, like a stick.
Like a bundle of sticks. Yup, like a bundle of sticks. You know? You know? The Lord's going, the Most High is going to destroy all you niggas, man. All right? The whole land is filled with blood because you niggas is wicked. You shed each other's blood all the time and you complain why you're always at the bottom. You niggas is wicked, man. You don't treat each other right. You don't treat yourselves right. Okay? And that's all part of the curses. And we pray, oh Lord, we pray that the Lord take us up out of here very soon, man. Because it's just like at this point, what else? You know, let the MOTB done, and then we out of here, man. What else? Because these niggas is done, they through. And you got IUIC them talking about they want to save though. You going all the way to Kenya. You got Jakes over here bugging out. Why don't you go to them? Nah, you're not gonna go to them because they're gonna talk some shit to your face.
They driving them up out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
They shooting tear gas and shit.
You know what I'm saying? They're not trying to hear all that. Oh, the black Jesus, black Messiah. Nah, bro, they're not trying to hear all that, man. They're not trying to hear all that. All right. Jake is, you're going to Jake neighborhood. I just put a video up last week. I actually went to this Jake community and they talking their stuff or whatever. Yo, I know that. And this dude is like, yo, everywhere y'all go, y'all cause commotion, man. And you having his boys smoking right in the front in the lens of the camera, man. I'm like, look at this mess. Why are you doing this? And you're not even going in the name of the Lord. You're going in the name of Jesus Christ. That's why they smoked you up. And they're going to keep smoking you. That's the Lord mocking you. That you're not coming in my name. Don't go out there doing all this shit thinking you're going to be safe. Because you go in some Jesus Christ name and some shit pop off, you better cry to Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Because some shit going to pop off if you go in the name of Jesus Christ. That's the name of confusion. All right? That's the name of what Esau had put on the earth to create confusion. So you come in the name of confusion, what the fuck you expect?
All right.
You know? You got it, bro.
We're going to wrap it up on here.
Yep.
It says here, all right, so it says, we shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm. So as I said, they're basically going to trigger some, as we mentioned, some Jacob's Trouble-like event, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism. So basically people moving as though there is no God. Origin of savagery. I mean, this time is going to be so bad. You're going to see what the origins of savagery looks like. And of the most bloody turmoil. That's Jacob's Trouble. And they're telling you they're going to provoke that. Then, and it's interesting how the scriptures align Jacob's Trouble with World War III. You know, it says, then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers in civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction. So basically a lot of these so-called Christians are going to see things so horrific that they're going to be doubting their belief. They're not going to have some direction what to go in. That Most High in Christ bless ain't going to be blessing no more. It says, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive. So you're going to put them in a state of such desperation and confusion that they will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And that's their plan right there for that Third World War. Okay, so, you know, that involves that Jacob's Trouble. It involves the Christian. So they're speaking like, hey, Christianity is basically something we made up to like put you in a mental hold for a while. And now we're going to basically bring this chaotic moment to basically squash it all. And that pure doctrine of Lucifer is that NWO. You know, eventually they're going to tell you, look, that whole LGBTQ no IQ shit, that whole atheism and Christianity, we don't actually believe that. Just so you know, for the record, we made that for you to put you in a temporary holding space. This is the real thing that we want you to believe in, and you're going to bow down to it whether you like it or not.
Yep. And like going back to a quick point to highlight what he talked about with Christianity being disillusioned, we're seeing the steps now. All right, there's actually a church called the Church of Perpetual Life, and it's a church that explicitly embraces transhumanism. All right, so it's a church that explicitly embraces transhumanism, using science and technology to aim for life extension and a better human experience. Okay, and it says their sign is a fiery phoenix, and we know what the phoenix is associated with: the phoenix rising, the whole New World Order concept, right? So they're already infiltrating with the whole Scientology and dataism and all this bullshit transhumanism. They're already infiltrating the churches already, and they got people actually believing this stuff. So they're not even talking about the Bible or God or none of that. They're actually pushing transhumanism. Okay, so that's all part of the disillusionment that's going to be created upon the face of the earth very soon. A lot of these churches you go into on Sundays, they're all going to be pushing the same exact narrative. All right, take the C hip, take the C hip, take the C hip. All right, there's nothing wrong with it. We're in a different world now. We're in a progressive world now. The old ways of doing things are archaic. Leave that shit in the past. We're in a new world. We're creating the new world. We're building a new experience. You know, this experience, you become the God. They're going to push this shit, you know, and these fools going to believe it, and they're going to get cooked. And we're going to sit back and laugh at them when we're up there, Lord willing, looking down at this place getting torched. All right. And then, of course, we're going to end it off with this precept here. One more before this last one. This is the book of Matthew 24, verse 12. It says, and because iniquity shall abound, we just read, right? That they're going basically the origins of savagery, the most bloodiest turmoil, all these things, right? That's all part of the iniquity, a lawlessness, right? It says, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. All right. When you go into that word cold, it goes into, I believe, the word psyche, right? Or in other words, they're going to be mentally deranged to the point where they're going to be able to do certain things that most people wouldn't naturally do, right? Cannibalism is going to be nothing because they're being prepared for it now. When you go to McDonald's and you eating burgers and shit, it's mixed with all kinds of things you might not want to know. All right. You might not want to know. When they say it's pork, shit. You know what I'm saying? Let's get this last one and then we can close it out if you don't have anything else.
Yeah, Con, you good.
Yep. And this is the point we were sent here to give, right? The warning we're sent here to give is the book of Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 7. It says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. And we're fast approaching to the time of Jacob's trouble. And you know, through the Spirit, sometimes whenever we do videos like this and we talk about certain things, shortly after that, those things can tend to happen. You know, we might not know. The Spirit just jumps on us. We talk about it. And then soon after that, those things we talked about actually plays out. You know, so hey, we watch and see. But the fact that all of a sudden we bringing this stuff out, hey, it's a sign, right? We don't do it on our own accord, right? So the Heavenly Father sends us the information and we just give it. All right. So, you know, Lord willing, you brothers and sisters were edified, you know, and pass it to you and close it out.
Hey, yeah, just like you said. And in Amos, it says that before the Lord does anything, he reveals it to his servants, the prophets. So let's see, right? Lord willing, sooner than later. But hey, in closing, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh. And Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahshai Brakatam.
Shabbat Shalom to the elect. Shalom.